Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Survivor 48 for Survivor Global. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here to talk about Mergatory. They merged, they got buffs, etc. And to talk about it, I have someone from Australian Survivor who I always love to talk Survivor with. We've been channeling Australian Survivor. I didn't quite hear the word mateship, though I have started calling Survivor 40 mateship because we're talking integrity and we have to have someone who's been on the other side of that. It is a great Harry Hills. Harry, thank you for being here.
Yeah, no dramas. I like that as well. The M8ship 48.
Yes. Yeah, you
40
put the 8
mateship.
in there. Yeah. They don't know to use the word mateship because they're not
Mm.
Australians. Right there. They keep saying honor, integrity, deserved. All the other bingo words are in there, but they
Yeah,
don't have mateship. So
yeah.
that's the kind of thing. I don't think David's seen Australian Survivor somehow.
It's all the things that we've like learnt to hate about Survivor. Like when people like preach and get on about integrity, it like depending on where it goes, it almost is an anti-meta season. It's definitely an anti-meta idea to like bring that back together, real old school. Like we're gonna get the band together and we're gonna like go to the end together as a loyal five. So I'm interested to see what actually happens with it. I find this season really weird, but like in a good way. Like I like that it's odd. This episode to me wasn't huge, but it does still exemplify like that you've got weird things going on, very different things going on. I don't think anywhere else in this sort of like new era have we seen these sort of like real just anti-meta like loyalty sort of thing.
Well, it's so funny because David's like, this isn't going to be like any season I've seen. I'm like, David famously like didn't know who Jeff Probst was. Like that was like his thing pre-season that he was like, really not a fan. And it felt like the one season he had seen that he kept referencing was 45. Which if there's any new era season that kind of had the meta of like loyalty, like 3 before made it pretty much to the end and got 2 of the final 3, and they had the winner as well. So I'm like, if anything, I feel like this is kind of like, how does David know everyone's so skinny? He definitely hasn't watched all of it. But yeah, I mean, like large parts of that alliance, we'll see in the Chizzy points for me, I think are incredibly good. And I'll talk about all the, the reasons why. Obviously, yes, having a majority alliance at this stage is very, very positive. It's just more the way people talk about it. Like Kyle like he was saying like integrity and honor, all of that. But like also it's like he feels like he will exploit it. And that's fine. Like exploiting that, using that to further yourself, like gameplay, fine. I know I've definitely defended it in your season, the athlete alliance that you were up against, and I was like, they are all athletes. Like it makes sense to be like keep the strong, as much as we don't like it. Strategically, fine. I don't like when people in confessional are telling me who deserves what because it's A, doesn't exist, and B, why are you the one to decide who deserves things?
Yes, attaching like morality to certain game styles and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things where it's like you look at Survivor and like the social experiment and that sort of thing. And it is a good example of that because the whole idea is you're just meant to fit in with what's going on in your sort of season. Like you're meant to follow this like integrity, mateship sort of stuff if that's what's in front of you. If you see that everyone's scheming, which has been a lot of the seasons in the modern era, then you just go with that as well. Like you go with the fast pace, you do the strategic things and you vote out very logically and you be pretty cutthroat because at the end people will reward what they sort of have been doing as well. Like you sort of put that mirror up and people want to reward what they think is valuable. So it really is like a good example of that social experiment thing. You got to play with what's in front of you, not with what you've seen before or what you think is right or any of that sort of thing. And I think that did get Charity out. I think even before it got to this point, even if you're talking about like easy votes and that sort of thing, I don't think she was fitting in with this season. I think if you took her and put her on another season and there was like all sorts of big game players and people playing very strategically, I think she does well. In a season like this where people seem to be more undercover and just like looking for people that put their head up, I don't think she does so well.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's strategic versus non-strategic because I feel like what this mega alliance, this mateship alliance is doing is very strategic. I think that what it is what you're saying. It's like undercover versus loud and upfront. Like Charity will be the loudest person actually doing the least because she didn't have the social capital to advance it compared to what the mateship alliance is doing, which is very, very strategic. They have basically an onion alliance where they have this group and they have all these people on the side and they've got people on the outside and it's subtle and mostly undercover. And that's actually very, very strategic, just that people don't know about it, which is impressive, which is actually why it annoys me more that they're like, we're not going to be manipulative, and people who are manipulative are going to go home. It's like, you're being the most manipulative and you're winning. Like, good for you. That's great. Like, that's good strategy. But yeah, all the people who are voting with you who don't know that they're on the outer of your alliance are being manipulated. And that's a good thing, but don't act like that. And also all the strategic plays, all the social plays, you guys have been social enough to make these connections to be in control, which is great. But then, don't act like what makes a strategic social player? Like someone wearing glasses, like that's you guys this time. You're doing it very well. You're just doing it undercover. Know that about yourselves and know that it is in essence working because it's manipulative.
And I think the interesting thing is like integrity, loyalty, all that sort of stuff is great until it runs out. And then that's where you actually see like when people, it can get messy, and that's where it could be very good TV. It could be extremely messy. We've already seen that this season has people that take things quite seriously, like when they don't go right. Like we had people last week like crying when they voted out. We've had Say repeatedly sort of get really upset and cranky at things. So I mean, those sorts of ideas of like, we're going to be a group, we're going to be loyal together, those are great until you hit the wall and someone like maybe Kyle, Camilla start to flip things, and then all of a sudden people might be taking it really, really in a bad way. And then you can get bitter juries and that sort of thing. So it'll be very interesting to see how it actually plays out. But at this stage, if that alliance just like runs together, you got like the Milk Alliance and loyalty and that sort of thing. If they just like run straight through the competition, then good on them. But it definitely would be an anti-meta sort of thing that we haven't really seen, except for maybe, Reba 5 or Reba 4.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, like that was. I mean, they were controlling it as a 4. To be fair, TK have controlled things as a 3 and have gotten to the end. So we definitely have seen like some loyalty, but I think that the meta of the new era is always that like you will cut people when you need to. Like it doesn't matter how close you are. And I think that is true for some people in this like Milkship Alliance, which I think should be the name of the alliance, in that I think that Kyle definitely will cut things. I think obviously he'll use Camilla to do that. I think someone like Joe is not a hypocrite, because Joe, I think, will self-sacrifice before he were to turn on his loyal allies. But I think as well, obviously if that goes south, I think people would have feelings of it on the jury based on, again, like what the season is like meant to be from within the alliance. And then even from outside of the alliance, I mean, I hope, and we saw this in Australian Survivor 2016, you can't bring that to a final tribal council. If they're sitting next to each other, they have no choice. If they have any other choice, someone like Christy Bennett can win, because if you go to the end and talk about it, it doesn't hold up, because what you're saying is we weren't being manipulative, but you were being manipulative, again, to most of the people, but you aren't deeming those people as important. I think that's what it is. It's like the important people who we've deemed as deserving and human in this way, really, the people that like aren't worth betraying, we're not going to manipulate them. Outside of that, we're manipulating everyone, but they just don't count. And they count when they're jurors. So if you come in and be like, there was mateship, it's like, well, what about me? It's like, oh, we just didn't think that you mattered as much. And that doesn't look good to a jury. So definitely on messaging, I wouldn't get to the end and be like, even the things David's saying now. And Jeff calls him out. He's like, you literally haven't been to tribal council. And good for Jeff, honestly, saying that. I thought that was the best of all the tribal council stuff we were getting, because if you get to a final tribal council, it was like, we played with honor, loyalty, integrity. Everyone's like, we were voted out within that. We were manipulated. Were we just not as important? And like the subtext is very much yes. So I think if they had seen Australian Survivor, they should know that it's a very challenging message and it's ill-advised. The strategy is great, but like don't be buying your own message. If they were saying it to each other and using it, fine. It's when they come to me in confessional and tell me they're not being manipulative while they do it and talk about who deserves what. That's my issue. It's funny because we have not started talking about the episode. I wanted to ask you thoughts on the season and everything, but the rant was just right there. And from the intro, we have now spoken about it for 10 minutes, and it really just shows the feelings that I had about some of the messaging in this episode.
Yeah. Well, I think it is the overarching story, really. And like we can maybe go into the vote split later and it might even demonstrate it even more. But I think that is the overarching story, is that there is this large alliance that just kind of looms over the game at this point. And I think everything else has sort of been flavor that's kind of added to that. But I think this might end up being the major story of the season.
Yeah, and it makes sense for, to be fair, so many of them who now have meat shields, who, if they want to check out, puzzle threats and they don't see themselves as puzzle threats, like that's all good. But again, don't moralize to me. But Harry, how do you like the season? Let's go. How are you enjoying it? Who are your favorites? All the questions I should have asked 10 minutes ago before I started talking about milkship.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like milkshakes, and I don't like Mateship that much. But
It's a
I
combination.
like this.
Yeah.
I like this season. I like that it's weird and different because it's like, I mean, we've watched how many seasons? 47 before this, so it's like you want something different. I like that they're bringing different things to it. I like that they're refining the new era style a bit, so that you've got the longer episodes and that sort of thing. The characters I do actually like, and it's been a weird thing since I played a long time ago, where I actually really do enjoy the more genuine, authentic characters that come through, even if they've got no chance of winning. I mean, even like, it's just funny. People like Roxroy, who's just literally there for like nature. Like, I like that. And you've got some people here where it's like more about a personal journey and that sort of thing, rather than it being about the win. And it's like, I don't want to see that all the time, but it's nice to have that little bit of flavor in here. I like the idea of having some people that are like, I'm here for the money, very specifically, like I need money. There's some people here like Joe that are like, look, I'm just here like maybe to win, but also like if it comes down to it, I'm not gonna like change who I am as a person. And I like that as well. So overall, I like the season. I think that there's only been a couple of standouts in terms of like gameplay. Kyle and Camilla were really sort of like actually brought like very high level gameplay, especially when they really don't get a lot of time to actually like get into it. And it's like, you've got a Mergatory episode where people haven't gone to tribal yet. So it's like, you really don't expect them to really get how it works. Like, you can't really fault them too much for not having the practice. So we've seen some pretty high level gameplay from Kyle and Camilla, but apart from that, it's mostly just been entertaining characters, and I'm okay with that. I've liked the season so far. I'm interested to see where it actually goes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking now, instead of meat shields, should we be calling them milk shields? I think I'm going to be,
Yes, milk
putting
shields.
milk into every. Yeah, but it's true, because so far what we've seen is mostly Vula, like mostly Mary, Cedric, and Say, who all have big gaps in what they've been doing, but they've been doing the most. I mean, they've played more Survivor than everyone else on that beach, like 5 times more, But like, you can't say that it's all been consistently good, because it's been impossible to dominate a run
No.
like that. It's been way too tricky with, it's been too finicky. And I still think, Cedric, that's why I've credited Cedric of just knowing what was happening at the 5 tribal councils he's been to, was enough for me. Even if like I question some of the decisions, I'm like, that's actually really impressive. Even Say and Mary, who've had, Say's not been in the loop sometimes, and Mary was out of the boat. I'm like, good for the 3 of you getting through that, compared to people who, saw tribal council for the first time tonight. But I think that does speak to the meta. You're saying this has been quite a different meta than usual. But the Mergatory vote, whether they, have people half immune or not, I think we've really interestingly psychologically seen how they've like unintentionally built, I don't know why they would be intentional, but they've unintentionally built like the most conservative vote in every possible way. And it's been spoken about, obviously, that like if you just
incentivized, yes.
But they're not trying to do that, because imagine if you said to Jeff, like, do you understand that you're making them be conservative for this big merge vote every single time? He's like, no one would want that. No producer should want them to be like disincentivized to make a move, but they are in every way, like psychologically being like, you get a buff if you just get through this. It's like, let me just hunker down, just do whatever you want. Like, no one make a move. Obviously that's a big part of it. Obviously the fact that this was actually the most votes in the new era, because everyone voted for the first time at the Mergatory, because no one played their shot in the dark, which they definitely should have. Say definitely should have played a shot in the dark.
Well, there's only been like 5 people per tribal as well, like in the lead up
it was
most of the weeks.
6, 4, 2, 6, 4, 13. So that's where we're at. So they come from the tiniest possible votes into a
where the intensity, the intensity is up here when you're playing with like 5 people, and it's like a really high chance it could be you. And it's like, all right, like you got a game, you got to play, like you've got to hustle, very specific votes. They're definitely going to be having conversations with other people. And you just have to accept that very like end game. And then it's like, you've got 13 people, and it's like, oh, okay, well, you might get a block of like 4 people voting for someone just because it's not their name. They'll be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'll go with that plan. Like you could literally just walk up and say a name, and people would be like, yeah, like it's not me. It's not. It's like neutral. It's not like a net negative or a net positive. It doesn't really need to be.
And it
And you've
gets me into my
probably
buff.
got, yeah, exactly. Like every single part of it's incentivized. It's also incentivized because in these big groups, you can hide what you're doing if it's just this thing that everyone wants to do. If you get like 11 votes, then no one's plans are revealed. It's like everyone just votes out that person. You one step further. No one's alliances are pointed out. Like, with the only exception being if you really wanted that person to stay. That's the only situation in which like an alliance is really pointed out. And I think if you get like an easy vote of like 2 people that are like on the chopping block, like it was here, and the vote was interesting as well because I think it might have been a split vote by the majority, like
Yeah,
as easy as
definitely.
you get,
Yeah.
like literally just a whole chunk of people that are just like, all right, these 2 people, if one plays an idol, then the other one's going home and it's fine.
Yeah. It was unanimous other than Charity and Mitch. And it was the split that everyone can be put on. And again, that's like the broadest thing to do when there's 13 votes for the first time in the new era, because pretty much everyone who had lost a vote was sent home for that reason. So we had all the lost votes had been, been taken that had been done, and then no one played the shot in the dark, which again they should have done. But I think that this is what's been missing. We've talked psychologically about it's people's first tribal council, or they come from these tiny tribal councils and they just want to get to the buff and all of that, about why people are so conservative and really have been in these Mergatory votes. But I think what's going missing a little bit, and the way I would be thinking about it if I was out there, is you should assume, and it is going to happen, that next week is the split tribal council. That's been the case, that they immediately go from Mergatory to the split from 44 onwards without changing. If I'm at the bottom, I mean, obviously if you're at the bottom, you don't want to, if you're at the bottom, obviously you don't want to be outside of that for the split tribal anyway. But if you're in the middle and you can kind of try and come together to really like rally the troops to get like 7 people over a majority, like then you're just going to be upended next week. Like the best situation for a large majority is to get into splittable groups that are defined by luck next week. Like you want to be in a group where there's like 2-3 people on the outs, which there are. The Vula people I think are really on the outs, and we can look at the groups because I think Say and Cedric are both kind of screwed. And that's the perfect situation. You'd hate to like make a big move and then next week you'll swap without your allies, and the numbers are slimmer.
Yeah, it's great to have all your alliances be hidden in this as well. Like they have incentivized the big like pylon, because it is like if you've got this like milkship alliance, like you hide that, and you can also rely on an old tribe because it's like, you've got your OG tribes, and for some of them they've still got a decent amount of people there, and so you've got these options. You haven't committed one way or the other. And you can basically just be like, yep, like if we split next time, I think Milkship have like 6-ish people. So you've got pretty good odds of just going into a split, where you either have a 3-3 or you've got control over things, and you've got a lot of like ready built relationships going into any sort of weirdness that might happen.
Yeah. Well, the Milkship Alliance actually, so it's the 5 of them. So it's David, Joe, Eva, Shaheen, and Kyle. And then on the side of that, they have Camilla, Chrissy, even though they left out Mitch, someone like a Mitch. They've had Mary, that David's kind of had, I think, on the side. And also, like, to be fair, everyone on the bottom is also just like coming for each other. They have Star on the side. So if you look at the groups next week, which have been posted from press photos next week, so Eva, Joe, Chrissy, Star, Mitch, and Say, that's like, I mean, that's terrible for Say, but the rest like can all kind of keep it pretty stable there in a small group. And then it's going to be David, Kyle, Camilla, Shaheen, Mary, and Cedric. Like Cedric is screwed, but the rest have done very, very well, where whichever way they went, they basically just had a couple of people to pick off. Like even if Say and Cedric were on the same side and they needed someone else, like Mary could be picked off, or Mitch, like it's such a clear hierarchy with, a lot of people all just wanting to stay very, very safe. And I think that leads it to be conservative. And I know that's what I would be thinking if I was out there. I'd be thinking, why rock the boat now when all I want is like to be in the biggest possible numbers to just maximize my chances for a swap next week, which is again what they do every single season and have done since 44, that they will, have Mergatory and then immediately go into these 2 tribes. So yeah, I think that it makes so much sense. I wish someone would tell production about all the ways they are
Please
instead of
stop.
people to make. It's an interesting experiment. I don't think it's one they're trying to do.
It is
So yeah.
cool though, because it's like opposite of Australian, where it's like you get the 12 people and that's where you start, is with the easy votes, and it kind of feels okay from a TV format because it's like you still might get the chaos from people just meeting each other. You still might get the chaos from people learning the game or a random twist or something like that very early. Whereas this is like people have worked out the direction they want to be going at the very least, and you're just giving them a free round to basically like be kumbaya and push themselves further, solidify a relationship with someone who maybe hasn't voted before. That's a great way to solidify things. Be like, I told you I was going to vote this way. It's exactly what I did. Now we're good because we're like building trust in this way. Even the vote split, it was like Charity and Say, but then in terms of like the actual alliances and that sort of thing, like it's weird when you actually look at it, because you've got, if you're looking at the Milkship Alliance roughly, it's like half of them on Charity and half of them on Say. And then you've obviously got other people like Mitch who you just know is going to vote Say. So it's like you can start to take numbers into account. Like Charity and Mitch are going to vote Say they thought was going to vote Charity, but
she voted Cedric apparently out of pettiness. She said online. I was trying to work out, I'm like, did she think Cedric was the other side of the split instead of herself? She was being petty. Not advised. Not what I would do in that situation.
I think Say is a good person to, if you ever like going on Survivor and you just like, if you want to win, just don't do anything that Say does. Just do the opposite. Like when you go back to camp, don't get really, really, really angry and then not apologize about you voting for someone else who's still there, but get really upset about someone voting for you.
Well, to be fair to say, some of it's working. I mean, she's going to do everything at 100, and like she was always going to get the advantage in the challenge. Like there was never a question. She literally like manifested it to the point where she like comes out of nowhere to take Charity, which was kind of actually an interesting like metaphor for the way the episode was going to go, where it kind of looked like, well, you know, that like Charity was like making a way that Say was going to go, and then Say like rushes ahead of her and actually makes it through to get her buff. But some things that Say are doing, I think, you know, are interesting. I enjoy her as a character very much. I think the fact that she
absolutely
get mad, she'll dial it up to 100 and be so mad, and then immediately get over it, and then she and Mitch are fine. You know, but I think that she can't kind of understand how people still, like someone like Mary, is holding so many ill feelings towards her because she's past it. Like she was past Charity in a way that other people aren't. So she's doing everything at 100. When it works at 100. Often when it's when it doesn't work, it's the
fails
opposite.
at 100.
I think as well. Look how many votes we have, that she can throw a vote on Cedric. Before she was throwing a vote, that was a deciding vote. You know, before it was like the one vote that would get to a re-vote, that would get to a rock draw, all of these like finicky votes, and instead she can just throw a vote on Cedric for no strategic reason, and that's where we're at. But I think what we're saying with the split, obviously, this is a pure split because the people in power are on different names. Like this isn't a decision where people are trying to wrestle control. Like this is an 11-person vote for me. Even Say knows Charity is going home. It's an 11-person split vote that's near unanimous because again they've designed it as such.
Yeah. And so it's not interesting if you're watching this episode just as itself, but it is interesting to actually see what comes next. It's interesting to see the story in terms of people that haven't actually had a lot of time together trying to build this alliance. And the alliance is interesting because it sort of like crosses over all the OG tribes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I have a bad feeling for people like Say, people like Cedric. Mary maybe could get through. But it'll be interesting. I think ultimately at the moment, from what we've seen, people like Shaheen, Kyle, Camilla are probably the sneakiest, but they're the ones who've also worked out what is going on. Everyone's very kumbaya. You've got to lean into that while you're making your sneaky moves happen.
Yeah, I mean, again, you talk about like Australian Survivor starting at 12 people. Often, like, it does get into like a very early war because you're going to be in that configuration for a couple of weeks and you can depend on that. So winning out the numbers is actually very important compared to the opposite here. We're winning out a slim majority is not that helpful. You're about to swap. Like, you need to be in the mass group. So someone like Mary, who in other worlds might be, you know, incentivized to work with a group on the bottom that doesn't exist, because again, Say and Charity are working at opposite ends and often against each other. But someone like Mary, I think, is like, well, you know, incentivized to take out people on the bottom and try be that last person. I mean, we kind of saw this in 42, and Marianne was like being protected, defensively protected. And then at the point where everyone on top is going to turn on each other, you can be the one to survive through to that. So for someone like Mary, I know she wanted to stay out, but like getting out easy fodder like Charity is so good and easy. You keep vocal targets in front of you, like I say, and then hopefully it gets to the point where it's going to fracture and you can survive through and be an underdog and get to the end. So there's just no incentive for anyone to try and wrestle the numbers. It's very, very good to even be on the outer. Someone like a Camilla, who's technically on the outer of like the core milkship alliance, I think is in a great spot, you know. And obviously the fact that her alliances there are hidden, like that is great. So people who in another world might see like these pretty blatant conversations, I don't think they know there's an alliance, but they know that Joe and Eva are so close. They know, you know, possibly that Shaheen is part of that. Maybe they've seen Joe and David have these conversations, can see that they would connect. In another world, it's like we could have a majority to turn on these people, but through the positive relationships that they have on the side, that to their credit, like David has with Mary, and that they've created outside of this group. And also because why would the people on the bottom want to turn against them at the point where they should just kind of run it down through the merge, and especially through these twists like swaps coming up. At that point, then all of the people who become technical swings in the middle of this like power group and the people on the bottom are incentivized to just add mass numbers to the people on the top. And that's what they're going to do. And that's what, you know, happened here.
And the thing is, yeah, you're right. Going back to like a thing you said at the start there as well, is like, if you're spending a lot of time together, then it almost is also like a good thing to just keep things happy and keep things sort of working rather than really push. I mean, I know that I've done things all sorts of different ways. Sometimes you just get those tribes where it's like, you know, you're on the bottom, but you should probably try and keep things happy, because then maybe there will come that time where you can work your way in. You don't want to like cut those relationships off. I mean, I had that where it's like I was on a tribe with champions and they weren't unpleasant. They were never unpleasant. They're always very friendly and nice, but they weren't going to give us anything strategically. And you just almost have to say like, you know, okay, like we're still going to be nice, but we're still going to like, we're going to have to push back a bit. So I think in a way, Australian Survivor does kind of like mirror this a little bit, where it's like you need to lean into like being kumbaya with people, but at the same time, in somewhere, and maybe you do just have to get to the exact point. Like if you're an individual, if you're talking like Mary, maybe she does just need to get to a correct point, and then they finally split that loyalty. Because honestly, that will be the bomb. Like that will be the bomb if someone like Joe, because Joe, he seems like incredibly lovely, but he seems like he has that intensity like behind his eyes, where it's like if you did betray him, maybe this sort of like anger comes out. So like I could fully see that where someone betrays them and there's just meltdowns basically. And if you're on the sidelines of that, if you're Mary just watching that, I'd just be like, yes, like we're in here now.
Yeah, but you've got to make sure that you can get through a split tribal to get there. Like this is a very dangerous time, but if you can get through it, then I think that things are very much looking up. So with that in mind, like, I mean, who did you think between Say and Charity as like the targets, who did you kind of think was a right target? I mean, it's very different for everyone, but where did you kind of see both of these targets?
To me, it depends on who you are, because it is just about having like a 1-2 punch, really. Like I would probably want them both going the next couple of tribals. And Say is really good as like a lightning rod. She always speaks up. She always gets attention. But at the same time, she could be dangerous in terms of we're going to get to the point very soon where people are like, oh, well, I can just beat her at the end. So she's coming the whole way with me now. I would see that danger around this point starting to present itself. Like people have hit merge, like there's no more Mergatory. People will start to be like, all right, like who out of this group can I beat? So that is dangerous in itself. I also like the idea of just keeping Charity around, because then don't you still have that whole OG tribe, like the
Yeah.
original Siva? And that in itself is scary for a lot of people. Like, you'd have to acknowledge that that's scary. You'd have like 2 greens left, you'd have like a couple of the purples, and then you got this big thing. So to me, if I was any of those other people, I would absolutely love to get rid of Say first, because then you get rid of that like jury threat, and then everyone is going to want oranges out next time, and you could maybe even get 2 out if it's a split. Although saying that, it is dangerous just having them as a big group potentially on one of those 2 split groups. So I mean, there's risk there, but at the same time, I feel like, yeah, I would maybe go Say first and then
I
see if you
mean,
can break it up.
yeah. Firstly, good luck dragging Say to the end. I feel like that is probably better in theory than would be in practice.
Good on
But
paper, yes.
I think that, like, in many ways, you want Say out now because Say can get things done in a way that no one else can. And not even just that Charity can't get. Like, Charity, I mean, Charity could be there. I think that Mary had the perfect analogy. What did she say? Like a snake or a turtle? I don't know what she called. I know that she called Charity a
Yeah,
turtle. I don't
she
remember
said
what.
she said she's not afraid of a turtle. Yeah.
Yes, and Charity has nothing with no one and never will. Like, Charity has one ally in the game. Say can make things. Say doesn't have allies either, but Say can make things happen. But I think that the issue is because of that, like Siva 6. Like, no one wants to allow the Siva 6 to be a group just because they might be, and then also Siva just really like don't want that to seem like they're a tribe, because they're not. It's not even true. So you'd hate to be targeted for something that's not even true. Like, they're trying to completely
Yes.
dispel those tribal lines, and that
But
just
that's the good thing if you're any of the others, because then technically you can pick 1 out of the 6. Like, it doesn't have to be a specific person. You could be like, all right, this person, and it could be for a completely different reason, but you just say we're picking them because we need to get rid of a Siva member. So
yeah,
there's risk.
but
I get there's risk though.
well, I think that the thing is, Siva have done so well, other than Charity, Siva have done so well socially through the swap. Like, we saw the allies that David made with Eva and Mary. We saw even Mitch made allies. We saw Chrissy, and, you know, they aligned with Cedric in their own way. And obviously, Camilla and Kyle did so well. So a lot of people are not incentivized to want to kind of have Siva as a target, let alone Siva or not. And I really feel like, yeah, like, no one pretty much wants Siva to be this big block that isn't even true. And if someone's going to suffer for that, everyone wants it to beat Charity. And I think even though she, again, could be there for ages and I don't think could really get anything going, that becomes the safe foot. And then for people who are on the outs, like a Mary, as an example, she wants Say out, but I would want Say in as like such a vocal target over her. For me, it's like, you would hate, like, I don't think you can drag Say to the end, but I kind of think Charity could just be forgotten at a point because it's just kind of like a neutral option that people don't really like, but isn't really threatening. And then maybe I'm a more threatening person on the bottom. So I wouldn't want to keep Charity around to do that. I feel like Charity, listening to her exit press, like, still doesn't really understand what happened here. Like, Charity just had nothing socially with people. And we really see the difference between people who really do well through the swap. Like, we see, like, this whole Milkship Alliance is built through great social swap work, like the way that new Vula of Joe, Shaheen, and Kyle and Camilla's, you know, part of that. But like, how well they did socially with each other, how well David did. We see that that's how you build the group. Like, Charity has not had that with anyone. And she's like kind of confused about it in the X interviews. Like, when was I scheming? We did see a little bit of scheming, but it's more just that, like, people just didn't like her. Like, she didn't like socially get a run in there.
If they've got the leg up on you as well, they can just poison conversations as well. Like, anytime you do anything, like if you go off on your own or if you're doing things, like, that's what I used to do. It used to work a lot better in Australian Survivor because you have this really large amount of time. So you can just throw out little comments that start to build up into an argument against someone. But even in this, if they've got greater social capital, they can just make little comments, say that she's off scheming somewhere, say that she's off looking for an idol or this or that. Like, as soon as you have more conversations and better conversations, they can just basically poison people against you once they have that leg up. Like, Charity's never going to be able to make up that without something that's objective, something that's an observation, things like that. If you don't have that, then it's really hard to actually bring that back and catch up in terms of like relationships and that sort of thing. If the other people are playing well.
especially because she didn't seem to know what was happening and still to this day doesn't understand how she lost out socially. And also because I feel like she was doing a lot of it to herself. Like she even talks about like her relationship with Star and how she had Star's advantage through a lot of the swap, but was like, I was maybe going to just keep it to vote out Star. It's like other people were building relationships and she loses Star for what it's worth. Like she completely misjudges Star, tells her that she should be taking the idol back from Eva, and Eva has won over Star from her and she misjudges that and didn't win the relationship. Like if you're not going to tribal, which Charity doesn't, through the swap, or you're barely going, or through the pre-merge, you really need to use that time to make relationships. And she does not come to the merge with any social capital. So whatever that's being done against her and that she couldn't stop, or whatever is, you know, what she's doing is like a discredit to her. And even like in the exit, she's like, I don't know why David got rid of me. I was willing to take him to the end. Like, how are you watching the show and thinking that that's what's happening here? Like, David doesn't need, firstly, you can't take anyone to the end. You were unanimously voted out of your first tribal council. And secondly, David has a lot of other options that he deserves, quote unquote. But to be fair, he's doing very well. So it's like, I'm willing to take David to the end. Like David, like he's fine, you know, like he's working out like his other pathways where he doesn't need to rely on someone he clearly doesn't really like. So I feel like she still doesn't really get what happened here. But for me, it's pure social game. Like if you come through to the merge technically and you have one person ready to stick by you, like that's like a failing on your behalf through the first few weeks of the game.
I think it literally was just social game, and it was just coming out of Siva into the merge. She didn't probably have many people that were sort of defending her, and easy vote. Everyone wants the easy vote. I think it was quite simple. Going back a step, I think Star had a bit of a breakout episode at this point, and maybe the last couple of episodes as well, because I think he's maybe had a slow start, ingratiated in. Also just seemed much more fun this episode. I don't know what it was.
I've always loved Star.
Like singing by the ocean. I was like, this is great. And I love the sort of anti-meta moves of like giving away your idol, especially when it's like public. It's like, why not? Just give it to someone else. Like all that they're going to probably use it for is, well, I would have expected her to actually play it this time. Very brave not to, but I guess that was sort of in conversations that weren't on television that really just settled everything into that maybe 11. But I would expect that to get played quickly anyway, and for it to put a target on someone else's back, and you pick up an ally in someone that was probably your worst ally in your original tribe. So I think it's fantastic. I think it's really been built. Voted for the correct person. Yeah, voted for Charity. So things are looking up.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I was just thinking about it for Charity. Like Charity had met 8 other people coming into the 13-person merge. And they knew her and decided no. Compared to, like, to be fair, Say has put people off across the aisle, but like someone like Cedric, you know, has played with 4 people coming in. And I do think Cedric is in a difficult spot, but I feel like it's through a limited options compared to the fact that like Charity had options and they made a decision. On Star, I love Star. Like from the beginning, I was like, it's unfortunate because people aren't getting Star, and it's because she's too much. And as someone who, you know, can kind of get that same kind of criticism, I was like all in on Star. And I love how much people are seeing it now. I definitely saw it and spoke about it last week in her interaction with Eva, how much she was so there for Eva. And I love the way that she was accompanying her in that moment, even though they've been on opposite sides. And we got so much of it here. The moment with Cedric, who, again, she's just meeting. So that's like an incredible emotional moment. But my favorite part was the drive-by on all of her relatives throughout the entire episode. Like, firstly, she's calling out her brother-in-law, being like, you told me to do this, but I'm not doing it. Then to Cedric, even in the Cedric conversation, she's like, my dad couldn't do this. It's like, okay, Star's dad.
I
and
love
then the
that,
tribal
like,
stuff, like, oh, it was great.
As well. So I love the breakdown of like the fourth wall of like, you know, like I was talking to my family about like things I should and shouldn't do. And as someone who has had those conversations, is like, I'm gonna do this crazy thing, and they're like, no, you're gonna get voted out. That's a really bad idea. No comment on that. I was like, no, that's a really bad idea. It's like, I'm gonna do it anyway. This will be fun. I like that. I like just going out and just, you got to be yourself. You got to have some fun. So I really, really like that. And yeah, comforting Cedric. I think Cedric finally hit the wall, and this is something. Honestly, I don't know if we've ever seen this before. This goes back into like, you know, we're getting these character moments, and it's like this amount of seasons. I don't know if we've ever had anyone who's been simultaneously so bad at challenges that he's getting people voted out, and also being very, very good at social game, strategic game, so much so that he knows where all the votes are going. He's the one who's doing the voting people out, very strong, while also being incredibly weak at challenges, to the point where he's kind of costing everyone that and then voting them out. And I feel like maybe it was the sort of thing where the weight finally caught up to that. Like, he's just caused so many losses to like friends and that sort of thing around him that is just having that low. Because to be honest with you, if I had been on that split with Cedric and seen that he was standing next to me at that challenge, I would be like, well, we're not winning. Like, let's just not get muddy.
I don't know why he was so upset. No, you're not even going to participate. It was actually otherwise like such a strong group. So that was a bit unfortunate. Cedric was so upset about this. Like, he did just lose them, I guess, the chance at immunity and reward. When like other times he lost, like I think when Kevin got voted out, like he's like really the reason that Kevin left there. To be fair,
that stick thing, wasn't it? And it was like
over the balance beam. But the thing is, Vula were very, very bad at challenges anyway. I don't think Cedric was helping. Whereas I feel like Cedric here was in an otherwise strong group and like clearly really pulled them back. So, you know, I think that I really like Cedric so much. I think, again, he's played more Survivor than like pretty much other than Say and Mary, than most of this cast like combined at this point. And I don't see how he gets through his 6 next week. It's just like, how much bad luck. To be fair, he contributed to the challenge losses, but like it's not been a good vibe for Cedric, and I'm worried that kind of arc, which is necessitated so much playing, is going to just kind of end in the swap next week, because I kind of think he deserves more. And like I do think it's possible we just lose Cedric and Say on opposite ends of the tribe split next week, which would be so unfortunate, because look at this dynamic. Like this whole episode of Cedric comes back, he's lied to Say. Well, he didn't tell her that it was last minute. Say's so mad. I actually thought that he handled that really well. Like, he threw Bianca under the bus, which we know that everyone does. But like, he actually was kind of right, and like she was. To be fair, she had no other choice because she'd never vote, but she was playing them against each other, and he can use that, and it seems to go well. By the end of the episode, though, she is like, again, voting for him for apparently petty emotional reasons. This was not part of any split that she was told. Again, incredibly ill-advised. And like, again, I always have the questions of like, has he put too much stock into saving Say? But then I thought that was pretty good. They were going to continue through a pre-merge last week, because she was calling him like a number through the pre-merge. And then the way that arc will probably end is like they go on opposite sides of the tribe swap, which will be so unfortunate. Like, that's not the way that story should end. I feel like it's still so rich with opportunity between Cedric and Say.
But in a way, doesn't it, like, it's almost like this other sort of lightning rod, in terms of he doesn't look like as much of a social and strategic genius because all the tribals just look chaotic. Because he has had really good intel on everything going on. He's this calming presence. People seem to tell him too much information, which has to be, like, you have to give credit for that. Anyone who can, especially in this era, get information out of people in an era where everyone should know not to give up information. He's pulling all that in, and because Say is there every single time, maybe he's not getting that credit, which is a good thing at this point, because maybe he doesn't get that heat. Like, he just doesn't look like this sort of person in charge, because you can just be like, oh, well, every tribal was just chaos.
Yeah. But I think that what's going to end up happening is less about credit and more about, like, I think what Cedric's really good at is creating individual connections. We've seen it with Mitch. We've seen it with Star now. We've seen it when, obviously, a lot of like Star was amazing, but like, obviously it was a lot with Justin. Like, Cedric is very good at the one-on-ones, I think, and that really behooved him through a pre-merge where there were like 2 votes, or like 4 votes, where his vote became so important and was deciding the day pretty much every single time. Even Bianca, like, he had these connections. And I think now it's a horrible spot for him where, again, his options have been very limited, and we're in mass votes, where, again, even if he gets to a smaller tribal council next week, those big majorities are going to win out. These big mass votes that are about big sweeping majorities. I'm not saying that isn't based on the really good individual connections that have been made elsewhere, but I think that when you can have like that 2-person vote win the day, That's worked really well for him. Now he's limited. Now, you know, he has people maybe vouching for him on a smaller individual level, and there's just not going to be any room to move next week compared to where he's been in the past and the connections that he's made. And I do think that it's really unfortunate. Yeah, like when you're on the side here of like, you know, big unanimous votes, big mass splits, you know, where it's like 7 to 5 to 1, that's not Cedric's game as much, I think. And I do think that I see the end of the runway next week. And I would be really upset about it because I've really enjoyed it. And I think sometimes the way people can make those really good individual connections one-on-one can be kind of overlooked. And I think that that's not the spot for him right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would agree on that. I think there's some other players a lot stronger when you just get those groups and they'll sort of have that bigger voice if you're in a group of like 5 people all like scrambling to see who they're going to vote for.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, we see the building blocks of something like the Milkship Alliance is based on the fact that, like, at the New Vula, they had these amazing conversations that Eva and Joe are obviously very close individually, that David has done, I think, a lot of good individual work. But I think that they're also the kind of people who are then like, and here's how it all films into like a, you know, forms into a big glass of milk. And they have this like big majority. And I feel like Cedric is on like the margins of these like individual relationships, which are so key. But he has won every vote and has hardly had to have a majority yet. You know, like his majority was like, you know, 3 people, maybe 4 at a point. And that's been the votes he's been winning because it's been all of these like Cedric-led plurality votes through the pre-merge based on individual connections he's made and earned. But now that we're getting to like the big majority, they have won out. And he hasn't had the options, to be fair, of having, you know, created that because he's met, you know, because they've been losing challenges, he's met so much fewer people that have made it through to this merge. So I just think that like, if it's going to get to a twist, he just doesn't have as much space compared to someone like I say who also hasn't met people, but it's seemingly pissed off people she had not even met. You know, people on the other side, you know how loud she was on the mat. And I appreciate that so much in Say, when you can have from a TV perspective, when you can have a tribal council that's a lot of like dancing metaphors and everyone's like just giving their analogies, and Say will like give like a real statement. You know, like Say wants to be honest. Like Say, I don't think she can help herself. From a TV perspective, I always appreciate that because I think it's more real. From a game perspective, you know, people have made up their minds about Say in a way that's probably a bit more earned than I feel like Cedric is just like, this isn't the space for him. And I feel like he just hasn't had the options and he's just not going to sit well in the spot as much. Yeah. I mean, what do you think of Say voting for Cedric out of pettiness here?
Terrible. I mean, like you said, I think as a character, as a TV show sort of contestant, like I'm up here with Say. I think it's great television. I think the honesty is really, really good in terms of like, you've got entertainment value, you've got things like sort of going on and on about the reward and like all the good things. And then the game player in me is just like, stop talking, like, please stop doing that. Like, it's especially the one really big thing you don't want to do is be a hypocrite, because then arguments can just get destroyed. Like, as soon as you're hypocritical in any way, people can really start to like break your arguments and that sort of thing. Same as how they might break your loyalty and integrity arguments at a final tribal. Anything where you're hypocritical, just, it's a no-no. So her having a go at people last time for being like bad winners, just really comes back immediately in this one, of her like going on and on about the buffet. And they gave it the editing treatment as well to make it really seem bad. But I don't think it's a great sort of move a lot of the time to be that honest about things. And some of those things can be good. You had a great time at the buffet, that's great. It's not good to really just lay in with it when you're sort of talking to people who were back there. Anytime you go for a reward, you really shouldn't say that it was that good. If anything, you should try and make up reasons why it wasn't that good.
Yeah, I think that this was kind of a race to the bottom for Say and Charity, who don't have enough to come together here. Again, they're like actively targeting each other. And even if they weren't actively targeting each other, there aren't enough numbers there. And it's so fractured. It's a group that involves Cedric, who, again, Say is voting against, a group that involves Mary, who wants Say out. Even with all of that, there aren't enough numbers. And even with that, it's like, how hard are you going to try to push to come over the top of a group you don't even know exists to possibly just get swap screwed next week, where maybe like it's not a good situation for the people on the bottom next week at all, but maybe you just hope for the luck of having another target in front of you next week, because there's just no room to move for the people on the bottom. So then it becomes about just surviving, and neither of them I think did very well in just trying to like see this one out.
Yeah, I don't think the others know it's coming yet. I think that they've really hidden this reasonably well. Obviously, people are going to be like, oh, well, Eva and Joe, and they've got an idol. Like, that's dangerous. But they might end up just having conversations to people that they don't realize are in cahoots with them. Like, they might not realize, like, oh,
Definitely.
you could have David, you could have Kyle, someone like that, Shaheen. You could have all these people that you're giving away the information to, that might actually be quite happy to just keep going, at least until a point where you can like flip it back again, maybe at like an 8 or a 7, maybe a 9. But yeah, I don't think that the others realize that this big alliance is what's coming to sort of get them. I think they still will go into that thinking that it's like fair game, just sort of like blank slate.
Yeah, they definitely don't know the exact numbers, but as you said, I think they can just generally know that Eva has some social installation and an idol, and that's how she becomes like a really relevant big move target. As Charity says, it's like too aggressive and impossible compared to just like Charity and Say. Again, it's something that they can't achieve, and we'll talk about kind of like Eva in that and her idol. But for the two of them, I think in knowing that that's impossible without knowing exactly how she's insulated, but again, just on I can't control a split vote here, and she has an idol, I think is scary enough, let alone the fact that she has like all the numbers working for her there. But at that point, it becomes, okay, just don't be the person voted out. And I don't think Charity knew how much she was on the bottom necessarily. Obviously, if you know that, you at least want to play your shot in the dark, or don't, be like the most irritating part. And I feel like Say and Charity were competing for each other, because I feel like, again, Charity really misjudges Star and her relationship with Star, who will go back to Eva and tell Eva what she's saying. And I feel like Say as well is like throwing out Eva's name. Like Eva is a target that you can really go full on and try to get, which is, again, you can't, and I would not advise that, especially with an idol. But if you're going to do that, you have to go to people on other sides, people like Charity, or, across to each other and try and get this done, which again, I wouldn't advise, but at least try it. What they both did was kind of slightly put it out there, irritate the masses in different ways to be like, who should be the target here, but never have a chance of getting it done, which is like kind of the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, they both got stuck in the middle of the road, basically.
100%. But the thing is that they both did it. So then it became an interesting debate about who should go home. Because I kind of feel like the one thing they could have saved Charity is if she's not being irritated and really puts her head down and has never said that to Star and misjudged Star, maybe then the fact that Say will just like yell out one of the most insulated people's name in Eva, maybe that's enough that like, okay, well, like Say's doing, and like that comes back to Eva. But also it came like, the fact that Charity is doing stuff is coming back to the majority. So I think it's about, obviously, if you can't get the numbers, which they can't, and you don't want to go for someone with an idol, which they, you don't want to, then it's about knowing that and not ever putting it out there and just being quieter than the other targets. It's a terrible spot. I'm not saying that's good, but it's certainly better than being like, okay, if you're choosing between us, just remember I'm doing these annoying things which make me a target more than the other person. But they were both doing that, which again made it an interesting, even race, much like it was for that advantage.
I think ultimately Charity just failed before this episode, because it's like if you've got people from your own tribe coming to vote for you and quite happy to let you go, then that's sort of where you've lost. Because ultimately, if everyone just voted with her, she would have had a ton of votes going on Say It, and you would have been fine. So yeah, it really feels like it's something that was just a long time coming from her original tribe. And if they had have gone to tribal, maybe she just goes really early on.
Oh, definitely. I mean, on Sivan, even the split, and I didn't even agree on the swap that David should be targeting her that early, and he wanted to. So you can't even say well, they like Charity, but she's just at the bottom of Siva, and they need to give a sacrifice to not look Siva strong. It's he wanted to do it even when I didn't think it was a good idea at the beginning of the swap. So it's just purely on those social connections. But it is interesting because Say throws a vote here at Cedric. Again, when you're the target, she obviously doesn't know she's such a mass split target, ill-advised. I would either be contributing to the other side or using shot in the dark. For someone like Say, if she can kind of sense where she sits there, obviously shot in the dark. It's interesting that she doesn't use shot in the dark, though, because I do think that if Cedric and Say have anything in the 6 next week, it's knowing that you're on the bottom, hopefully, and playing shot in the dark, which is kind of its own thing if they'll know that, and if the Milkship Alliance can kind of hide, how clear that majority is. But it is interesting that they both come out of 5 tribal councils, and they both have their shot in the dark, right? So that is good, because
They're doing well.
I think she's tied the record for like most tribal councils in a row to start, I think, with a vote. She's received a vote at all of her 5 tribal councils, at least a vote.
I think that's a record as well, almost, isn't it?
Well, I know that in Australian Survivor, not to spoil, but there's a similar record at 5 tribal councils from the beginning. Do you know how many votes you got in 2019? How many tribal councils you got votes at? Because I counted this.
I know I got a lot, because I remember it being part of my pitch at Final Tribal Council, if I got there, that I think I'd had the most votes of the season and like survived through like a lot of, intense times and that sort of thing. I don't remember exact numbers. I'd be very happy to hear.
I don't know the exact votes, but it was at 7 tribal councils. And to be fair, of many more tribal councils. Say it's 5 for 5 of getting votes at the tribal council. But she's not used her shot in the dark yet. So other than finding an idol, which I honestly, if anyone's going to find like a merge idol, say I think will, the fact that she hasn't used her shot in the dark, which I honestly would have been scared enough to do at this Mergatory, but now that if she still has it, next week, that's the time to try and protect either of them, because it's not a good vibe for these 2 rulers next week, I think. Yeah.
Interesting.
So okay, who else? I'd love to talk about Eva and the idol then, because obviously this gets out. She took the idol last week, which she didn't have to do. We're talking about Star giving away this public idol and how that might be better. Eva has the other side of that, where she now has the public idol, but she has survived through with it here. She's going to have it through to the double tribal, which I think is a good thing. You never know how that double tribal is going to shake out from a numbers perspective, as much insulation as I think that they've created. But then it has her name out there. Everything with Joe and that relationship, and her having the idol makes her a bit of a target. So where do you see about where like Eva sits here with the idol?
Well, I think it's just the perfect sort of example of Survivor being a game of like, it's a double-edged sword. Everything's a double-edged sword. So it's like you've got an idol, you've got power, but everyone knows about it. So that's like a massive target at the same time as having power. You're also insulated by people, but will it be enough people to really get you through? It's hard to tell. I think that if it was me, I'd probably just play it, because then you really sort of get rid of that target. You could even make it an exercise in sort of establishing trust, be like, look, I'm just going to get rid of this. But obviously we have conversations that don't sort of get put on television. They've obviously felt very, very comfortable with this sort of 2-person split between Say and Charity. So not playing it now, I think that she's made a good move, obviously, because she didn't get any votes at all. So obviously it's the correct move, but I think it is a delicate balance moving forward. I think that if you don't have good reads on people, like she says she doesn't have good reads on if people are lying to her or not. It's one of those things, isn't it, where it's like a real blending of reality with gameplay. Like she's talking about it as if it is this very, very like out there disability. Like the way she talks about it is as if it is a disability, in terms of like, I can't read people, that sort of thing, as if it actually is like a negative thing impacting her gameplay. So, I mean, to me, I would probably just want to play straight bat from here. If I was her, I would probably just be moving forward. You play the idol probably at that high risk situation. If there ever is like a split thing, just tell everyone that's where you're playing it at and just sort of move forward from there. I think if she's not holding the idol, she's really not the first person to go in that group. She's got a good story, but will she say it well in a final tribal? Don't know. It's hard to tell. She did talk very well at that tribal council, because Charity was throwing out sort of ideas and she was just coming straight back with like, well, this is how I play, which is a great way to phrase things, because it's very like empowering. It's empowering to the people next to you. It's like, it's okay if you play the way that you play. I respect that. I'm going to play the way that I play. Very good way to phrase things. So, I mean, ultimately, wrapping it all up, I think she has made all the right decisions up until now. She has good social relationships. I think that there is a big target. I think it will go on Joe before her.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I
especially without
think,
the idol.
yeah, because I think that people would see it as like, oh, well, she's not going to make it that far without the insulation, whereas someone like Joe would just go scorched earth and potentially just superhuman his way to the end. And is like a great guy, could potentially be the sort of person that, I mean, I could definitely see him being the sort of person that gets burnt at like 6 or 7 and then just steamrolls to the end and wins, just based off of like a very straightforward like competition sort of challenges based game.
Yeah, which is funny because even in this episode, I think Charity is like, we'll take out Eva to weaken Joe. It's like, but you could also just take out Joe, who doesn't. It's funny, he didn't become a target when he doesn't have an idol that they're scared of. You're trying to weaken Joe, so you can just take out Joe. You don't need him for challenges. Like, it was interesting that the target didn't go to him. Maybe they can see that he's clearly that much more socially insulated in a way that Eva doesn't necessarily seem to be, that he feels like he's an impossible target. But I do think that they both do well here in that, even though it's so clear, and it had to be clear because it had to be outed in that really human moment last week, they have the numbers, let alone the fact that even for the people that aren't in their numbers, feel they can't come for them in different ways. I guess Joe looks that social, and Eva here having the public idol, I think does work for her, because interestingly, David is the one who outs that we see at the merge feast. And I think that's kind of fine because, again, that scares people off. Like, at the point where Charity's been kind of trying things, even like the names being put out there, they're like, but with an idol, that's a lot. Like, are we really doing can we really control a real split here? And like, they can't really, especially with the amount of numbers that Eva has. So I think there's kind of that implicit immunity in the chaos for her, and then it gets her through to a swap tribal. And like, depending on how that looks, like maybe you just play it there because at the split that might be just more dicey. And I would get rid of it at a point, but I think getting to keep it through to here is good, and she's not the target. So I think that's good. I did think it was really funny how David asked that information, and then Star's like, I didn't know that she had it. It's like, Star, your whole tribe knew you had the beware advantage firstly.
That was such a weird
publicly.
comment. Yeah, such a weird
Star.
comment there. Everyone's just like, wait, like you gave it to her. Like, who
Yeah.
are you lying to? Yeah, I think, honestly, I think Joe has nothing to lose if you get rid of Eva, but Eva gets weakened if you get rid of Joe. If I was playing with them, I would have just assumed that she was going to play it. I wouldn't be assuming that you've got a chance at knocking her out, because one, you got to really work out a way around her alliance and then get the votes and then assume she's not going to play it. And I probably would have assumed she might just play it just for automatic safety.
Yeah, I mean, and it also seems like not only do you feel you can't split on her and that's too hard and too chaotic, it seems like they don't want to split on someone like a Joe. It seems like they're not targeting, and maybe that's to his extreme social credit, but yeah, it made it feel like this kind of impossible task, which it very much, even more than they realize, very much is. But I think that this is, being played well right now, just in like how protected they are, even when they should be targets. I mean, you would see what happened last week when these two people have this like bigger than the game bond, and part of you might think like they're the unanimous vote next week. Actually, they're the split that all other 11 people are doing here, not Charity and Mitch, who are the other people left out who have very, very little. And it's to their complete credit that it's impossible. And yeah, like even just putting that out there was like a death knell for both Charity and Say in different ways. So I think that is impressive for both of them. And I think as well, yeah, using that idol publicly at that point to make it scary, to make it implicit immunity when there's no point trying to keep it a secret when you must assume everyone will know eventually. It has not been a well-contained piece of information, is definitely the way to go for them. So I think they did well on that. And then like, yeah, just looking at like the fact that Siva will leave out Mitch. I think that's one of the most interesting parts of Charity being the target, because Mitch has been closer, as we've seen. Obviously, he's a part of Siva. He's worked well with someone like a Kyle, and he's left out here compared to like if you take out, say, is anyone upset? Like maybe Cedric, who she's voting for. So, there's this kind of one loose end. Do you kind of think that should maybe change their target, or is Mitch kind of not worth enough there to what they're doing?
No, I think they'd just be like this is a easy thing. Like, we've got such big numbers. You've got safety net votes. Even if they come back upset, they're still a safety. I don't think it's too much of a big deal. Yeah. I think you can, like, when you're just that big, you almost want the backup votes. Like, I always remember thinking like it'd be good once you make a flip or something like that, to just sort of have, you know, the occasional, you've got like 2 or 3 spare that just can't actually sort of form any sort of like uprising against you, but it also means a couple more votes.
Yeah, I do think that that's not a terrible thing. Again, especially, you know, well, I mean, you kind of want all the numbers. I don't think you want to upset even one number. You'd hate for Mitch with his blocker vote to be so important at the 6th, you know, next week where he can try and flip to something, but they just have it so on lock where it feels like, who is he flipping to? Like, you know, like even that group is so fractured. So I don't think I think even within that, he still needs them way more than he still needs them way more than they need him, even
Yeah.
at its most unlucky tribe designation next week. Even with his blocker vote, I think that would have to go like, I can't even think of the ways that would go. He'd have to be with like Say and Cedric, who are making up, and him, and they use a blocker vote. That's pretty much how it can go badly, and you've pissed him off enough. Unlikely for that to happen, and it requires people on the bottom who are fighting with each other to team up against you. That's kind of the only way.
He's a very easy name to throw out as well. Because he's just sort of like a loose end. Like that's what you sort of want. Like as soon as you get back to the beach, you'd be like, okay, like we can just, like, if he doesn't fall into line or if we don't need him, we can just vote him out next.
That's 100% true. And I also think that there would be a bad decision to be made in 2 bad options for like a Cedric and a Say, even in that situation where it's like, do you want to upend this and take out a power player and still come back to being in the bottom? Or knowing that you're going to be in the 6-person tribe and then go back to the majority, do you want to throw Mitch under the bus and work with us to get through this tribal council and maybe make some inroads to a majority? And there might be a lot of self-preservation at that point where they don't go with Mitch to get the, you know, to win the battle but possibly lose the war. I mean, you're still coming back to minority, which is bad, but the thing is you're coming back to a minority either way. So it's like, are you going to make up to upend things with Mitch in the best possible tribe designation for you with his advantage like needing to be done there? Or are you going to, you know, have Mitch be, as you said, another possible target and try and make inroads for the long game of still coming back either way to being on the bottom? So I do think that, like, yeah, there's not a lot that Mitch can do even like at its worst. And I also think there's a lot you can go back to Mitch. Like if you're someone like Kyle, who has connected well with Mitch, and like obviously Mitch has also voted against Say, so let alone like him working with people on the bottom, like he's someone you can really leave out, even though she seemed to get over it. But if you're someone like Kyle who's worked with Mitch, like, or David has worked with Mitch, like you have to go back and be like, Mitch, it wasn't against you. We know you're really close with Charity. It was never going to be you. But like, here's all the things Charity was doing. Like, keep it all on Charity, as they always do. She was the problem, you know, and you see everyone do that. And I think with Charity, there's a lot.
To say. Well, like David can just say, like, I know that, like, I know that they do have that big alliance, but you can just be like, oh yeah, like, no, I was genuinely just voting for Say. I'm not like I don't have all that power. You can, like, when it's just such a big group, you can also just not admit that you have the power.
Or I had no say in how this, you know, I didn't want Charity to go, but it's like a, you know, unanimous decision. And then you could also be like, Charity was, you know, was telling Star to take back the idol. Like she took the shot. You know, Charity gave them so much ammo there. So I think that should be fine. It was so unlock. Obviously, this, again, good strategy from this Milkship Alliance, even if I don't like the way they're talking about it. Would you like to talk about some of that in the Chizzy?
Yes.
Let's do it. Take it away, Jacob Sager Weinstein and MC Color.
1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3. It's getting kind of Chizzy. 3, 2, 1.
I love the dance. Okay, again, to spoil my stuff, a lot of the Milkship Alliance are getting points because, again, I think that Milk Shield's good. You know, taking out people that you see as other, you know, threats that you don't have, maybe you're not as good at puzzles, great. Just don't say who deserves what, because that doesn't exist here. And also there's so many things. Don't act like playing lacks integrity. You all signed up to play a game where one person can win. It's just a function of the format. But anyway, we've ranted. Harry, do you want to give your points first before I commend people who I do like, but who are irritating me with the way that they talk about the game?
Yeah, it's a hard one because they have just really rolled into like one homogenous mass, like, and especially it kind of like makes things like, yeah, they're just this big milky custody mass at this point. Choc milk. So look, it's hard to actually split them, to be honest, but I'm just going to go based off of maybe little extra things that you sort of see. So I'm going to go with Kyle, 3 votes.
Yeah.
Just because he has a really strong position in terms of he's with the majority, but he also is on the periphery of the majority, which technically is going to start giving him swing votes. Also did well in the challenge. Very strong without people sort of noticing, so that's good. To be honest, it's really just the fact that he has the majority, but he also has options. And I think at this point, that's really important. He's definitely like a central onion component. I want to, it's hard to like split people like Joe, Eva, David.
Yes.
They all deserve a bit of praise. Shaheen as well. So I'm just gonna randomly pick Eva because she's
2 to
gotten
Eva.
through. 2 to Eva because she got through just completely clean in a thing where she had the potential to make bad moves. She spoke well at Tribal, didn't play her idol, defended herself pretty well, is in the center of that alliance. I think it could go very bad if she gets alliance members voted out, but I think the extra bits and pieces she did were very good. And then I'm going to give one to Star because I think that just the extra things that are going in have been really good, really ingratiating in with new people, like finding new alliances, working in well with people. We saw the thing with Cedric. I really liked that. Voted correctly. Also, Charity, I think, said that she really, really trusted Star, and then immediately Star's like throwing her out. So obviously is making good moves happen, just not on the TV so much up until this episode. But 1 vote because of all those extra bits and pieces. I really, really like it. And building things on top of voting people out.
Yeah, I mean, Star throws out Charity's name at the feast, and I think that it's interesting because in a different world, Charity gets to that advantage first and Say's name is thrown out because Charity is the one who's there instead of Say. But I still think either way, for all the reasons we've given, Charity is the boot. But yeah, I mean, Star threw Charity under the bus and was certainly a big, like, actionable part of Charity going home. It's just hard for me to give any points to people who aren't in that milkship 5 because I feel like they're really running things that other people don't know. It may go very well for the Stars, for the Camillas, especially Camilla, I think, on the side of that. But for right now, like, they have the agency to run that down if they want, and then they're in the best possible spot, and they're so insulated and controlling things. So I will also give 3 points to Kyle because Kyle has only made friends majorities wherever he's gone. He was completely in the middle on Siva. To be fair, and we'll talk about David. This is true of David too. Like, he was in the middle. He had the alliance. He went then to Vula and like not only won the vote, but then like made key allies through that of people he'd just beaten in the vote. And here, like, he just has so many connections. Winning immunity is fine because that's the whole point of having the milk shields. I just think that he's also thinking ahead. It's when Joe's like, we're going to run this down. David's like, we're going to run this down. And Kyle's like, to a point, right? Because I'm still am manipulating people. And another thing is that I was worried that he's been hiding that he and Camilla are so close and that Siva would out that to his new allies in Joe and Shaheen. It seems like no one knew that he and Camilla were that close, even on Siva.
Yeah.
That's very well done. So I think Kyle, who will now be, I think, winning the Chizzy, is in a really good spot. He's getting 3 points as well. I'm giving 2 to David, who I also feel has done so well socially through these first 2 groups. He's a social player. He's coming for the social player. It's fine, David. You can look like you and still be a social player. Like, he hadn't been to tribal council yet, but he built, compared to Charity, who's on the exact same tribes as him, he built so well through these first 2 groups to have, again, the allies everywhere on Siva. We really saw he in Kyle as a quote unquote swings, or just like being in the middle there. And then I also think the way that he, gets like an Eva, obviously so important. He had Siva, he had Eva, he brought them together here. He's also had Mary, who I think is really like attached to him and kind of hanging on to that. So I'm giving 2 to David. And he is driving this alliance that I think has a lot of merit. Just don't talk about it that way. You will lose to Chrissy Bennett at the end, David, if you keep talking about it at a final tribal council. Maybe that'll be like a Mary. Yeah, that would be an interesting kind of way to look at that. And then, a point to Eva. Again, I don't love that it's like her name being said, but it's never happening. She gets to keep her idol to the next round. Like, if anything, she's so protected that just saying her name is the reason we're looking at these people compared to each other. So I have to credit that. Star chooses her over Charity. I think that she kind of has, they've both earned that connection. I'm just a little bit concerned that her name's out there at all, but it's like, it's from people on the bottom and it was never going to happen. So I'm giving her a point. I can't give
Yeah,
anyone proof.
I think if people can heavily go after you and then you don't get a single vote at all, then that's
Yes.
worth praising.
And they keep getting votes because they've come for you. You know, people are like mad on your behalf. Honorable mention to Joe and Shaheen. Joe got for like the socializing, like the person that he is that makes like those big connections last week. Shaheen, honorable mention, unfortunately gets left out there. But I actually forgot to make a PowerPoint presentation with the Chizzy charts. Here they are on my phone. If you guys can see, these were the Chizzy charts last week because I unfortunately did not remember to put them on the screen. But it does mean that Kyle is now up to 14, so he's winning.
Yeah, wow.
David now is up to 3. You gave Eva 2 and I gave her 1, so she's up to 6. Who else did you give to? Star. So Star goes up to 5, and then Cedric's on 11, Say's on 9, Camilla's on 9, and then there's
so like really balanced.
There. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, I feel bad that Shaheen's kind of on 2. To be fair, this was the first time he's voted correctly, so maybe, but he's in this group. He's lost out. Joe is on 3.
He's always on the cusp, isn't he, of sort of like knowing exactly what's going on and having control, but just not quite.
Yeah. Well, he has control, but I feel like he has done well. Like, I mean, everyone in that group, it was just like, it's such a symbiotic group where those allies they perfectly matched up. You know, Joe and Shaheen were close with Eva, and Carl was close with David, and then David and Eva, like, it was perfect. Like, it was literally like they couldn't have scripted it better, but no, I can't give, 5 people Chizzy points, unfortunately. So this is the way that it's gone this week.
Everyone
and if they
gets
dominate,
points.
Yeah, the Chizzy takes that as far as like we possibly can by giving to technically, up to 6 people an episode, but we can't give to the whole cast. So that's where we're at. Thank you so much, Harry. Do you have more that you wanted to talk about with the episode?
I don't think on this episode. I'm like looking through my notes. I think we've sort of covered everything. The vote itself was kind of straightforward,
Sleepy.
and I feel like was just this sort of push on from the original tribe, and just eventually sort of caught up with her once Charity basically got to a tribal.
In a Mergatory vote that everyone's incentivized to play conservative. So it kind of, it was kind of like when you have like a nice warm glass of milk right before bed and then go to like a bit of a sleepy vote.
And to be honest, I'm all for it. If we get this like loyalty alliance, I'm all for it because 1, it's something different. 2, I think the longer it goes, the more it's going to blow up when it doesn't go the right way. I think if we get down to like a 6 or a 7, there will be that like bombshell vote. So I'm all for it just whittling down if it gives us that moment.
Yeah, I think, well, like, to be fair, Joe's like, we don't need the big moves just for big moves. But the format of Survivor is that you have to work together so that only one of you can win. Like, push will come to shove at a point. And even if you are loyal to each other to take out all the people that don't matter, and if you're manipulating them, it doesn't count as manipulation till you get to your majority. At a point, someone will win then. And I do think as well, I mean, Siva seemed to have more options. So actually, Lagi should strike first. Before Siva can, run it down and then use their options. Like they have Mitch, they have Chrissy, they have Camilla. They really have options. They have Mary, I think, through David. So I think Siva are in the pound position there, but that means that Joe, Eva, Shaheen should really look to kind of get in some numbers to win that battle because they're not poised to win the battle right now. Will they do it? Maybe just Shaheen. Like I feel like if anyone's going to do that, it will be Shaheen and he might be outvoted. So I do think that this is why I want to give Kyle when he gets 6 Chizzy points, because I really do think that, and then it gave David 2. I think they're really set up well. Like they do have this alliance, but then they have so many side options. Eva obviously has Star, so they kind of have that. But yeah, Siva just are in control here, and I think that they furthered that in a way that is really impressive. Just don't talk about it like you deserve to be there. Okay, it's fine. I can't. There's been too much. But thank you so much, Harry. You're not really on social media that I can tell people to follow.
Not a lot, to be honest. No, not a lot. If people try and add me on my Instagram, I very often refuse. It's not a personal thing. It's just that, that's my personal account now. I do still have my Twitter, but I don't really post on there. I'm just doing wholesome things at the moment. Just like chatting with you, and that's about it.
You pop up here on the podcast. That's where people can find you every so often. That's what we're doing. But I am podcasting multiple times a week. We know globalsurvivor.com, at Shannon Gates, Australian Survivor, recaps twice a week now. Mike and Chappella this week. Then Simon Mees on the Feedback Show. think there'll be an exit interview. Next week on Global, we have Taryn for the Stockwatch Global crossover for the Double Tribal. Stockwatch isn't a podcast that does Survivor anymore, but it's still the crossover and always will be. So we'll be talking about that. I think that's it.
Were you telling me
yeah.
before that you were going to do Secret Millionaire as well in some capacity? Because
I know
wanna listen
Harry's
to
been
that.
loving Chappelle and Brian Scally are doing that, and I would recommend their coverage. Two of the best.
Yes.
I know that you've been loving that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're here to plug? Secret Millionaire?
Yes, that's the sole reason I'm here, is to plug a different reality show. No, very quickly, I love Secret Millionaire. We've watched a couple of episodes. It feels like a mix between The Mole and Traders, but with the weaknesses to the game itself of the Traders fixed up. So I feel like there's a lot more room for like really genuine good gameplay, reasonable characters. I think it's format that's really, really good, and I want people to watch it so we can get more seasons of it where the strategy basically progresses.
People get mad when you point out that the Traders is a flawed concept, actually, which is crazy because it's so obvious. But
yeah. Well, when not to go too much into backstage stuff, but producers talk to me about it, and my strategy when I talked to them, I was like, oh yeah, you just steamroll straight through. You just completely ignore the Traders and you just vote whoever you want out, and you don't even acknowledge that there are Traders. You just do whatever you want.
Did they not like that? You weren't on the show.
No, they didn't. I don't think they like that. So I was like, well, it's like that's what you could do. If you really wanted to, you could just form an alliance and just steamroll the entire competition.
No, it's about messaging. You definitely do that, but then you keep saying, I'm looking for traders. It's a show about looking for traders where they just then recruit another trader. Like, messaging, as we've seen in this episode, Harry, is very important. So, and that's such a shame because you would have been so fun on the traders, flawed format aside. It would have been a good time.
And I've been a backup option too many times, but, I just keep my fingers crossed and we stay wholesome and I keep my phone by my side.
Well, not here in Survivor Global. You're not a backup here, okay? You're on the podcast, and that's how it shall remain. So, thank you so much. This was a great time, even for a sleepy episode. It's interesting seeing, how things will go forward. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. Thank you to the listeners, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.